Hello, hello, and welcome to Saturday Soundbites. I'm your host, Veronica Sofer, and I'm so excited to be here this morning with another episode of Saturday Soundbites, where we talk all things marketing, public relations, advertising, branding, networking, essentially your visibility strategy. We bring you guests that have amazing content, tips, strategies, and stories that will inspire you so that you can grow your visibility strategy and really show up for your business, for your clients, and for yourself. So if you are looking for some phenomenal tips on presentation style and speaking presentation style, because maybe that's something you're working on, just presenting yourself, then you are in for a treat because I have got a phenomenal guest. Brooke Young is going to be joining us in just a moment. She's an author, entrepreneur, professional speaker, and she coaches folks on how to communicate. So we're going to learn some great tips from her. I promise you, this is going to be an episode where you're going to want to take notes. So if you are watching right now live, then please comment so that we can say hello and engage with you. If you're watching the replay, hashtag replay so we know that you caught the show. And if you are listening on our podcast, we want to make sure you hit subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes of Saturday Soundbites. So with that, I'm going to invite Brooke up and we are going to start our amazing conversation. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on. I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited. I love the fact that you are a professional communications coach, and I can't wait to learn more about what that is so that people can start looking into what it is you do. So welcome, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. There is nothing I love more than what I do.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Good morning, Sandy.
Yay, perfect.
We got exclamation points. They make me happy.
Yay, me too. Me too. So for sure. So Brooke, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you fell into or pursued or were lucky enough to be blessed with these titles.
Yes, well, that is quite an eclectic story. I started in theater when I was quite young. I was 5 years old. So I was an actress, a singer, a dancer. And that's really where I developed a lot of my communication style and a lot of my ability to put myself out there. I did not realize just how important that would be until later in life. From there, I obtained a broadcast journalism degree. I did work for Ohio TV News and I worked for Fox Sports Ohio as well. In the meantime, I was a Disney princess. People love that, so I got to throw it out there. I also wrote a book about my therapy dog experiences when I was a child. Wow, that was a wonderful mistake from a communication coach. I know. There's just too much to list, and I also competed for Miss Ohio. So I have done it all. I have been quite eclectic, and all of that brought me just to this idea of communication, of speaking, of visibility. I love visibility, so I love this show, and a personal presentation because it takes a lot of confidence. It takes a lot of empowerment to put yourself out there.
And what I love about the things that you talk about, especially with your background, is it's almost like it matriculated up from a really young age. And it's like you built upon every component of that. So tell us about, you're a professional actor, you are on the stage, you're utilizing your skills, and then you decide to pursue it in college and then end up on television. Oh, by the way, and a Disney princess. So what were the transitions into that?
That I know that's so difficult. So just starting, I was homeschooled, and that gave me so many opportunities. And I'm a big advocate for homeschooling. So when I was a child, I was sitting in my room and I was singing, I was dancing, I was reading lines to myself in a mirror. And my clients will say, I don't want to see myself in a mirror. I'm like, well, honey, I used to watch myself in a mirror for an hour a day. So I did that. And then also in my meantime, I trained a therapy dog. Now that's a unique hobby for an 8-year-old, 9-year-old kid, right? I had a golden retriever. I saw an ad in a newspaper and it was just talking about therapy dogs and how important it was for elderly people and people in children's hospitals to be exposed to them. And I said, I want to train my dog as a therapy dog. I had no background. I knew no one that had a therapy dog and I had no experience training dogs. But despite all of these insurmountable hurdles, I actually trained my first therapy dog when I was 9 or 10 years old. And then we started taking her to nursing homes every single week for about 5 years. And that just changed my perception of communication. I was able to communicate with people that were 90 years old, and I was 9. And when we exchanged those ideas, my whole worldview, my perception just changed. And over time, I really believe that's where my foundational communication skills came from, was this exchanging of ideas and this compassion and understanding that we all have similarities despite what could be perceived as our outward differences. I didn't care that they had gray hair and wrinkles. I just wanted to connect. So that was a really, really big asset for me. I loved being on camera. I loved being on stage. So I said, I'm going to be a broadcaster. And then I went into sports. I did not anticipate to go into sports, but that really was driven out of a fear of, I don't like talking about homicide. I don't particularly like people to be hurt. And so for me, sports was a way to connect, to engage, to be fun, to have fun. And there's so much grit and perseverance in sports. So I was actually an interview host, and I was able to sit down with people. And the stories that you learn, the way that people overcome, the passion they have for their sport, it's really phenomenal. And as I just engaged with those people, I grew my passion for sports more and more. And TV news, although I loved it, wasn't necessarily my cup of tea. So I spent more time on the sports side. But everybody wants to hear about the princesses. Let's get real.
Yeah. I'm like, that's great. So tell me about being a Disney princess.
So I played multiple princesses, and that experience is life-changing for anyone that's done it or anyone that has been there. You just realize how magical that is. The children come up to you and they have this look in their eye that you can't get anywhere else, to be quite honest. And to be able to provide that experience for hundreds of families, it gives you this idea of delivery. And that sounds really strange, right? But I talk about it all of the time. There's 500 kids in the line, and not every kid is the same, has the same background, has the same experience. And so they all need a different style. But your job is to make it magical and wonderful and memorable for them, right?
Right.
And so some kids want to ask you 50 questions, and some kids would prefer to, you to answer 3 questions. Some kids want to be hugged. Some kids would rather not. Some kids would hold hands, or some kids want singing. All of those differences and being able to adapt on the fly, that really was a big asset for me, because every child needed something different. And when you go on an interview, when you go on TV, you really need to be adaptable. You need to be able to do something different every time and know your topic inside and out. And so when you were watching the movies and you're like, man, I have to know this movie inside and out, that's really how entrepreneurs need to be about their business. They need to study it just like I studied those movies.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I would say too, even for C-suite executives or traditional brick and mortar business owners, you have to show up authentically and connect with people. And so I love that that the illustration of thinking about all of the components that make that experience for that child. Because I was one of those kids. I was a 7 or 8-year-old when I went to Disneyland in California, and I still have the little autograph book that I was able to get autographs from. And so I guess it didn't occur to me, which is a good thing, that there was any thought or strategy or training that went into that experience, because it was just so authentic and meaningful to me.
Right. And in so many kids, and I always laugh about it when I take a picture just as myself. I'm like, man, thousands of people have pictures of me on their phones. So that's always funny to think about.
Yeah.
But it really is. It's not necessarily strategy because you feel it in the moment, but if you want to create a memorable experience for everybody, you have to be able to adapt, and then you have to change your delivery style dependent upon what that person needs. And for me, one of my specialties was working with special needs. And that's something that I have been very gifted at by nature, and I'm very fortunate for it. But you have to be able to adapt quite a lot to work with special needs. And so for me, I always wanted to work with Make-A-Wish kids, because that was a way to adapt. It was a way to challenge myself and to create an even more memorable experience.
Yeah, definitely. And so I think that that's a really good segue into how do you then use those skills in a professional setting? So, right, I think a connection, the intention of being authentic and connecting with people, that got honed in really clearly in that role. And then how do you bring it into the professional 9-to-5 corporate America role or the online digital entrepreneur space?
Yeah, so I love that you asked that question. I love that you just said the word intention, because I harp on my clients about that. They get very tired of the word intention. So when we're talking, I don't care if you're on a live video, I don't care if you're selling something, I don't care if you're talking to your friend about your business. You need to have an intention behind what you're saying. And we have really lost that. I don't care if you're an executive If you don't know what your intention is before you go into a presentation, before you go into a video, you're going to be very batted around by what happens. So on video, that can look like reading the comments instead of sticking with your points. And a presentation, that can be focusing on Jim's body language. Is Jim judging me? Rather than keeping with your presentation. And so the intention part is very, very important. Mm-hmm. Secondly, people have this terrified fear of the unknown. And for many, an audience is unknown. If I were to go walk out on stage, I do not know everyone in the audience, correct? Although you may know people in your boardroom, if you're an executive, you may know people on your live video, there will always be people you don't know watching you. And for many people, that creates extreme anxiety, extreme anguish, just a discomfort on a visceral level. And so I like to talk to people about this idea of, we are all like these little kids inside, right? And so when I'm speaking, because I've had so much experience speaking and singing to children, I think about this, how excited they were and just their pure excitement, right? And they want to learn from you. And we forget that when we're speaking to a room of 500 executives, they are powerful figures, they're wonderful figures, but there are still children inside of them. And audiences accumulate because they, A, want to learn from you, mm-hmm. B, want to connect from you, and C, want to communicate with you. An audience doesn't accumulate because they want to laugh at you. They accumulate because they want to learn from you. And so learning to speak to the inner child, and all of this can be so advantageous in helping people overcome stage fright and helping them connect on a deeper level. Because what we're really looking for is validation. When we communicate, we're looking to be validated, and other people are looking to be validated too. And so when we're speaking, if we don't want to speak to this part of ourselves that has our guard up, because we all do it, I do it too.
Sure.
And so we want to speak to a part of that person that wants to learn, that wants to connect, that wants to communicate. And that's how you touch people's hearts.
Yeah, I love that. And I hadn't thought about that, but that is a huge part of being on stage. And maybe you're a trainer in your professional world, or maybe I know the first thing I thought about when you were speaking was, we've got a couple of folks in our audience that are high-level, multi-level marketing team organizers, and they just do a lot of training. And that's probably the thing that we don't talk enough about is they want validation when they're training their folks, and their team members want validation as they're doing the training. And so I love that analogy because it's the first thing that popped in my mind. And I know when I've gone to see professional speakers, especially like Brene Brown, just being able to see her live presenting, that I just was so validated in my thoughts, mm-hmm. and you could feel that authenticity just flowing between the audience and the speaker. And I thought it was phenomenal.
Oh, absolutely. And I learned, and it really, this came from my multi-generational, back to the nursing home, taking the dogs in. What the people really wanted was to be seen. And mm-hmm. where I am from, I'm from rural Ohio, that was not the case in some of the facilities that I went to. Some of them had been there for 7 years with no visitors. And if you can imagine the way that they felt, the disregard that they felt. And so to have someone intentionally come and make them be seen and make them be heard, we don't realize the impact that has. But in the professional space, in the executive space, the entrepreneur space, if you can master the ability to make people seen, to make people heard, not from a place of, I'm slimy, I'm salesy, I want all the recognition, but from a place of, I actually want to learn and connect, because that improves my life experience. That opens me up to new ideas. That makes me a better person. That's when you find real success, is when you can master that ability.
Yeah, I so agree. That makes complete sense. And since you've been working with folks, and I know you've got clients in all different kinds of spaces, what are the 2 or 3 things that you see most often that people struggle with that maybe someone hasn't even realized it's a problem for them yet?
Yeah, so a big one is audio aversion, and aversion to seeing yourself. And believe me, I was there. So in full transparency, I had gone from the stage, and on stage, you are not watching yourself. You are in the moment and you are present, right? And so you're singing, you're dancing, you're doing whatever it is that it is, but I am not watching myself, and I cannot see myself. When I went to camera and I could see myself, that was a really difficult transition for me. And it led to a lot of picking myself apart at the very beginning. It led to a lot of, I hate the way my voice sounds. why did I just shift my ankle right there? My whole body moved. And so I would get focused on these arbitrary things that nobody else noticed. My clients, most of them struggle with that, whether they realize it or not. So many people hate webinars. They hate speaking virtually at summits, or they hate live videos. That's typically because you have audio aversion, or you have aversion to seeing yourself, and it's completely normal. 77% of people do. Who knew that? And so I always tell my clients, if you have audio aversion, put a phone down, turn on your video recorder, and speak to yourself for 2 minutes a day. And that is actually going to scientifically trigger something in your brain, psychologically, and you're going to get more comfortable hearing yourself. The other component to this is because I was a vocalist, I have a lot of insight into the voice mechanics, right? We don't sound the way that we hear ourselves. Other people hear us so much differently than we hear ourselves. And so it's very important to remember that your brain is always going to differentiate those sound waves from how someone else's is. And then practicing in a mirror. Watching yourself in a mirror is going to get you more comfortable both hearing and seeing yourself.
Yeah. Oh, those are really great tips. And I hadn't thought about that, but it is true. If I catch myself on camera, my voice sounds completely different. I always think, wow, is my voice really that high? I didn't think it was that high, because in my mind, it's not high, but so it's interesting.
Well, and for me, so my voice has a lot of different textures, and you might have been able to tell that. And that's from a very young vocal training at a young age. But when you are a princess, you use different vernaculars, you use different vocabularies, but you use different voice tones too, dependent upon who she is, right?
Oh,
and so you have to actually be consciously aware of that. So I have to be consciously aware of lowering my voice when I speak places like this, because my natural voice is actually even higher than this one is.
Fascinating. Okay, well, give me an example of that, because now I can't help myself. What would Snow White sound like?
I was not a Snow White. My biological sister was, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I mean, different princesses are different. So like in Aurora, would say something like, "Oh my goodness, those shoes are absolutely magical." And it has a little bit of a different little bit of a different sound. And that's just to create the full-on character, the full illusion. When I competed for Miss Ohio, this is a really funny story. So a lot of things are going wrong in my life when I competed for Miss Ohio. I had a plantar tumor on my foot, which is a tumor of the foot. My hair had been dyed a bad color on accident. Somebody had grabbed the wrong dye.
Oh my gosh.
And when I listened to myself back, I was accidentally using my princess voice instead of my real person voice. So yeah, I had a lot of obstacles there. And that is something I give that as an example to my clients too.
Yeah.
You grab 20 women, 20 totally different women with 20 totally different backgrounds, and you throw them up on stage and you tell them to talk about their platforms. And as you rehearse and as you listen, so many of the girls start to morph, and they start to sound like each other. And they may have had a totally different, they called them platform pitches going in. But by the end of the week, almost all of the women had the same exact format. And that's because we so often try to copy somebody else, because we see the greatness in them. We think that what they're doing to communicate is amazing, but we can't see the greatness in ourselves. Does that make sense?
Oh, completely. That makes complete sense.
I had a lot of trouble with that the very first day. I wanted my platform pitch to sound like everybody else's. Mine was totally left field. As you can tell, I'm a left field type of girl. And so my platform was very different. It was a lot more, bam, here it is, a lot shorter. And that was just intentionally how I had done it. And I loved my platform pitch, but I started to have these reoccurring anxieties. Well, mine doesn't sound like everybody else's. Is my platform pitch okay? I went out and I did my platform pitch, and my feedback was that mine was the most engaging and the most interesting because it was different. And I tell my clients, it's literally okay to be different. It is okay to be different when you're communicating, because we all have a different style.
Yeah, that's so true. That is so true. And I love when we can find a unique speaker or a unique trainer in whatever environment we're in, and bring them in, because you just need somebody to shake it up a little bit, and you get tired of hearing the same old, same old. So that makes complete sense. I love that. And what else, when your clients come to you, what other obstacles do you see that they're trying to overcome or get better at? I mean, is it really just as simple as, I'm a C-suite executive and I want to present better and be heard better? I mean, how do they come to you like that?
Sure. So I think a lot of different people. I'm working with 2 startup founders right now, and that makes me so happy because I'm helping them actually build their story and build their way to communicate about their brand from the ground up. So that has been a magical experience. Here's my personal philosophy on speaking. Speaking is like baking a cake. So your intonation, your articulation, your pacing, your pausing, that's the foundation of the cake. It's what we think of when we hear a public speaker, right? We think of a polished professional presenter. And then our soft skills are our frosting. That's things like energetics, dynamics. It's things like descriptive words and personification. It's what makes somebody lean forward in their seat and they're engaged in you, but no one can really put their finger on why. So that's our soft skills. And our sprinkles are storytelling. You want to have a unique storytelling angle. You want to be able to shape and share not just about your product, but about you, because that brings people to you, that interests people, and it finds commonality. And so our sprinkles are our storytelling. And I always say you want to have all 3 components of your cake. If not, your cake's not going to win the baking competition. And so you need to have all 3 of those components. So I work with people, entrepreneurs, startups. I work with people that want to learn how to public speak, people that have been chronically ill. I have been chronically ill before. And then want to share their story, authors that want to get their book out there, executives that want to do better in the boardroom, people that want to present to venture capitalists, people that want to be broadcasters or singers. I'm open to anybody because I don't believe that communication is this fixed skill. It's a growth skill. And I want to help anybody that's willing to learn how do better and
Yeah, I mean,
feel better.
I love that, and I love that that's a skill. Some people are natural communicators. We've all met them. Their bodies move just the right way. Their faces move just the right way. We're drawn to their stories. But other people struggle a little bit. But there are some skills that you can tap into that will help you grow. And I love that you're talking about that.
Oh, yes. Here's what I told my client the other day. I said, so right now, you're a regular horse. I want to help turn you into a unicorn, but I don't just want other people to see you as a unicorn. I want you to feel like a unicorn. I want you to feel like the golden unicorn so that when you walk into a room, you know that what you're saying is significant and important, and you have the hard skills. So that's your pausing and your pacing and your body language to fall back on so that when you're telling your story and you're in the softer skills, you still feel comfortable despite how vulnerable or difficult that can be. So I work on helping people get those hard skills down because nobody is teaching them. And it makes people feel so badly about themselves. But then we move into more of the empowering soft skills, personal presentation, confidence, energetic side of it that nobody's talking about either. And so I like to do the mixing of those two.
Yeah, no, I think that's brilliant. I think it's a brilliant approach, and I don't see people engaging in that space. And now that we are more globally connected and we're doing business with people all over the country, I have clients literally from coast to coast in Manhattan and in California, and I'm working with a couple of people in the UK and Australia. So we're globally connected, and without a huge resource to go to for these kinds of supports, people like you are a little bit of an anomaly. I'm just not seeing your services out there for people to easily have access to.
Right. And I want people to have access to me. I think it's really important, and so many people don't know I exist yet. So my goal is to be a thought leader for the next generation of people, kind of like a Marie Forleo. I'm a little younger than her, so I have some way to go. But I want people to understand that communication doesn't have to be something you silently struggle with for the rest of your life. You
Yeah.
can get help. It is a growth skill, and the way that you communicate is enough, just
Yeah.
because it's your style. But if you need a little bit of honing, if you need shaping, if you need helping, there's no harm in asking for it. I had vocal coaches. I had people teach me how to dance. I had people teach me how to act. I had people teach me how to broadcast. I had people work with me on sports. I had pageant coaches. I didn't just wake up one day and decide I was going to go do all of this because that wouldn't make any sense.
Right.
And so for you to decide that you want to share your story, I applaud anyone that's thinking about public speaking or speaking more often on video, whatever it is. But if you run out there and you don't feel good about what you're doing, you're going to beat yourself up over it. And maybe you should consider getting some help so that you don't fall into the self-loathing cycle, because that's really, really hard to dig yourself out of. And I
Right.
don't like
Right.
seeing people there.
Yeah, and I think too, it leads to a lack of growth. I mean, you kind of stumble a little bit and then you're like, oh, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. And then all that imposter syndrome
Yeah.
starts to creep in and then it's validated. And at the end of the day, you are really creating a block for yourself that could be alleviated with just a little bit of coaching. And I'm a huge proponent of coaches. I have several different coaches for several different things. I believe we are lifelong learners. And I just love that there's someone with your skills out there to help people. So tell us, Brooke, a little bit about how we can connect with you. How can people reach out to you and get to see your work, and where can they find you?
Absolutely. So I have a private Facebook group. I encourage anybody to jump in there because there's free videos, free training. You see me with and without makeup. So whenever I feel inspired, I come on there. And I'd love to see you guys in that group. Obviously, I also have an Instagram account. I'm new to Instagram, so don't judge me. And then I have a Facebook account. You can also reach out to me via email. I do 1 month, 3 month, and 6 month one-on-one coaching. That's my favorite way to coach. I love to meet people. I love to connect with people, and I love to actually work day to day on building that bond and building, your communication and confidence skills from the very ground up. So if you're interested in that, let me know. I am taking spots for fall and winter, and I would love to see you guys there. Will you put the emails and stuff in the chat handle below?
Yep.
I don't think I can probably do it good enough that people will be able to get it without seeing it.
No worries. No worries. We will definitely put that in the show notes. And if you're listening on the podcast, just make sure you go to the bottom of the show notes. We'll have them there. And if you're watching on Facebook, we will definitely put them on the comments. So Brooke, thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation. I love, and just so you know, my main takeaways were these are skills that can be taught. These are skills that can be taught, they can be refined, and there are resources out there for people who maybe don't have the confidence or aren't really sure where they need to make some improvements. So I just love that you have shared your expertise with us today on Saturday Soundbites.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you guys for listening. I'm so excited you're here.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. We will be wrapping up this episode of Saturday Soundbites. Again, if you are watching on Facebook and you're catching the replay, #replay. So Brooke and I can go back and answer any questions you might have. I'm going to drop all of her details in the comments there. And if you're listening on the podcast, make sure you hit subscribe, because we want to make sure that you don't miss any episode of Saturday Soundbites, where we talk all things visibility strategy, marketing, advertising, public relations, branding, communication styles, and networking. So if any of those topics are in your space that you want to learn and grow about, make sure that you let us know, and so we can connect with you at any time. So with that, we're going to wrap up this episode. I am sending you lots of positive energy and light, and we'll catch you next time.